Hi, in this segment, in this presentation, I want to give you an idea of how you write a lit review and what a lit review is and what I'm looking for in the lit review assignment. What is a lit review? Literature review. It's a narrative survey of the academic literature on your topic. So it starts with your topic, and as you, and usually you're starting out with your topic as you understand it, and you go and you look and see what academic scholarly research has and has not been done on the subject. And so you're trying to get an idea of what what have people done here, right? What are the questions they've asked, and how have they asked them? So that's the second thing. You're going to examine the methods used, and you're going to say, okay, how have they gone about looking at this? Right? Is this people thinking theoretically about it? Is this people thinking, kind of casually, speculatively about it? Or, have we done some serious, empirical research, whether it be qualitative case studies or, what's, or uh, quantitative research? What's been done? And what are the results? What are the questions they've asked? What are the answers they've got, right? And so that's what I mean by determine what has and has not been done. And notice the focus here is on the research, not as much the topic. I mean, the topic's in there, but we're focusing on, hey, what have the scholars done? Now, this is broad in scope, right? You're supposed to get the lay of the land. And I use a lot of things like what's the landscape? What's the topography of the literature? What's the state of the art of the literature? What have people been able, how far have they been able to get, right? So in general, you're looking fairly broadly at what the research is. And the thing is, though, you're narrowing the process of doing this narrows the topic of your paper. And you may, in fact, as part of the lit review, narrow the topic and only look at especially if you're finding there's a whole lot written on this subject, maybe you should be looking at one aspect of it. And then when you redefine your topic, the scope of the literature relevant to it necessarily narrows. And that's a big part of doing a lit review. So that's it's broad in scope, gets the lay of the land, and narrows the topic of the paper. And eventually it's going to lead to your research question, right? It's going to, by identifying what has and has not been done, you're going to find, hopefully, and it's the point of this whole thing, identify a topic for you to do your research on. And that's a big part of all this. Now, let's talk about what lit reviews are not. And this is, the common mistakes students make, uh, especially in this intro course, where it's new, and you're not sure what's going on. Okay. A lit review is not a term paper. A term paper talks about a topic, and it uses a bunch of readings, secondary sources to, find out about it and provide support. And you basically, in a term paper, you look at what people have done, and you bring their conclusions and research from a bunch of different sources, and you stitch together a story, right? Or an examination of the topic, and are kind of saying, okay, here's what people have, here's what we think, here's what's out there on this. And you're focused on the topic. With a lit review, you're focused on the literature. What are people doing on this topic, right? What have they found? What aren't they found? So that's a different focus. You're looking at you're kind of analyzing the literature, and the word analyze means to break it into its parts and see what's going on in there. And so it's a very different focus. And so one thing is, if you're focusing on the topic, if you're talking about your topic and not the research into the topic, you're off, right? And this is the biggest problem students have. And I understand it's difficult, and it might be more interesting to have a term paper on your topic. But as part of the program doing research, it's more important to be focused, to also be looking at what other people are doing and understanding how they're looking at the thing, so you can say, how can I look at this what opportunities are there for me? So that's a little bit. Um, the other things are simpler to explain. A lit review is not an annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography is a list of all your sources with like a paragraph, and that's an annotated paragraph or an annotation talking about it, right? And I get this now and then. I'll just get this list, and it's usually the reference, the full reference for each thing that a student found, and they talk about that one and then move on to the next one. And then maybe there's a paragraph or two summing it up. That is not what a lit review is. That is an annotated bibliography. A lit review is narrative. You're taking the whole thing into focus. So you will look at individual pieces here and there, but it's just not a collection of descriptions of papers. That's too bulletized. It is supposed to be looking at the broad, as I say, the topography, the landscape. This is very much you're talking about the forest, not the trees situation. It's also not a review article. Another common mistake students have is they get maybe like 3 articles. They find 3 sources and they give me a page and a half on each one describing what they did. And they review in some depth a small number of articles. Simply not what we're looking for. Again, we're looking to be broad in scope and to get the overarching view of, what have people done? What's the state of the art? What's the I keep saying lay of the land, topography, what's been done. That's the bottom line. It is not a research paper. It is part of a research paper, and it's the first part of one, right? But it's not going to prove anything. And sometimes people can't help but write it in terms of, we will, I will. First of all, you never say we unless you have a co-author. People pick that up. But, this paper, a lot of times you talk about the paper, which is perhaps just as awkward. But, there's no, this paper will show this answer, right? This is not about answering questions. This is about identifying questions. And this is what you do to identify the question you're going to pursue in your research paper. So that's what lit reviews are not. So don't do that. A lot of you are going to, and it's going to end up getting like a B, and don't blame me. But this is what you want to not do. What you do want to do, key thing, focus on the extant research. And you're in graduate school, we can use words like extant and sound really cool, or sound vaguely important. Focus on the extant research. Look at what people have and have not done. Identify schools of thought, right? And this is part of what I mean by the landscape. And Baglioni talks about this a lot in her text on writing papers. That you want to, she talks very much in terms of you're identifying schools of thought. So there will be times when you'll have maybe like 3 papers that you'll group together, and lit reviews very often have these citations with several people's names, several articles. And you have to be, you need to be careful about this when you say, whenever you write that somebody says, or some people hold the view, or some have argued, that some have argued better be followed by a citation of naming the people you're talking about. And so lit reviews are chock full of these multi-sites, parentheses and like 2, 3, 4 authors, date combinations in there. You're looking for the debates. You're looking for the schools of thought. That's what I mean by the topography, the lay of the land. And you're looking, when you find differing schools of thought, it's opportunity to do something to try to figure out which one's right, And so these things are very interesting, and these are what you're focusing on. You also, like I say, want to examine the methods used. You want to be pulling apart, like I say, analysis is breaking things into their constituent parts, right? And so one part of analysis is identifying schools of thought, or debates, or disagreements, or controversies. Another is, what are the methods used, right? Has anyone been able to quantify this? Or has it all been quantified and not been looked at in a case study method? I mean, look at the methods used, always with an eye to what hasn't been done, what could be done, right? Because that's the point. That's why you're here. And here's the thing. Focusing on research is important for doing this. Focusing on the research, not the topic. I find that when students write a term paper, and they're focusing on the conclusions that people have and what they've found, and they're filling in blanks, and they're amassing all that people think about a topic, right? And they get done, and it's like, well, what's left to be said, right? Because you've undoubtedly found more than you knew about the topic when you started, and here you've dumped out everything that people have said. When you focus on the research, it is more obvious. There are the gaps, the future options uh, are just much more obvious, and that's why you're here. Now, I understand in this intro course, we're not actually writing a paper, but down the road, you're going to have to do this. And, they're not going to teach you this in 6601. They kind of don't talk a lot about lit reviews. They expect that this is something we kind of assume that everyone knows how to do, because it is kind of a basic thing. And we're academics, right? We've been doing it for a while. But that's the point, right, of why we look at the research, not the topic. Okay. And like I say, identifying opportunities for future research is the point of the lit review. And it's where the lit review ends. It's the bang, right? So if you don't do this when you do a lit review, especially when it's assigned, in my course at least, you're not doing, it's the second part of the question, right? That I always, when I do essays, it's always like, did you answer the second part of the question? Well, this is sort of like that, right? This is the important thing. Now, it may only be a couple paragraphs at the end, but it's still important. Um, Lit reviews are the lead into your research. And I always tell people, when we do capstone papers, students will have a topic. And sometimes it's broad and vague. And I really don't want to talk about their topic until they've done a lit review, right? And once they've done the lit review, then I actually engage them on their topic and say, all right, you know, where are you with this? Because you can't talk about doing research until you find out what's been done. And you need to, research has to be cumulative. There's a few standards for research we have. One is that it's cumulative, that it builds on the research of other people. And the other one kind of intention with that is that it also research be original, that you stand on the shoulders of the people that went before you, but you reach a little higher, or you reach out in a different direction. Originality is important. Also, interest is this actually a valid subject, and is it interesting? Well, if other people have looked at it, then it is. And so, the lit review is your lead in, and I always say it's the first step for you to decide what you're actually going to do, right? And you're going to need to do that in, when you do research design in 6601, a lit review is part of it, an important part of it, right? And it's important for identifying the question. So you need to identify the thing that hasn't been done that you can do, the opportunity, and you need to contextualize it. You need to say, here's how what I'm going to do fits in with what's been done. And these are gradable, important, uh, standards of a paper. And so just doing that is, in fact, establishing things. People fail capstones or get negative comments in their grading because they don't adequately explain how how their stuff fits in, right? And then the lit review should do this. So that's why it's so important, and that's why I'm emphasizing a lot of the things here. Okay, so to finish up with some trivial points so we don't get disturbed by them. When doing the lit review, make sure you write it in a narrative form, no bullets. And when you read papers, by the way, you will not find sections of a journal article that say lit review, but there will be a lit review in the introduction. I guarantee somewhere in there they will talk about what other people have done, and they will contextualize things. And in the writing of the paper, it will over time they'll make it fit, right? And they rewrite journal articles. There's a lot of editing that goes. These things look nothing like what submitted to the original. Believe me, and they're um, even the good academics, they get a lot of help in writing these things, and so they eventually make it more seamless. So sometimes students say, I can't see where the lit review is because there's not a section that says lit review, right? Um, that's the narrative part of it, right? Getting it to fit. So, but for your sake, in here, write in a narrative form. Don't give me bullets. Don't give me the annotated bibliography thing. That's just a waste of time. Use proper citations. Don't put the whole, reference material in there. It's author date, people. It's author date. It's real simple. And then make sure you got full references at the bottom. But use proper citations. And like I say, a lot of times, when talking about schools of thought, get used to using multiple ones. That, hey, these 3 people seem to have this, or think this, and these 4 people think that. Use multi citations. Yeah, people ask me, is this supposed to be double spaced? Perhaps the most inane question ever. So sure, double space it. Yeah, okay, whatever. Don't double space it. I don't care. It's slightly better to have it. Yeah, but I've already wasted too much time. No set number of sources. This is another thing. What's the minimum I need here? Well, I don't know. How much has been written? You're supposed to go out and find the lay of the land, right? The lay of the land. How many articles have been written on this? Though I don't know how many. And so there's no set number here. And it's kind of an invalid question. It's a question that shows you don't know what the assignment is. And so you are going wide. And in that sense, you're only going to go into depth on important pieces, because that's the other thing you're supposed to figure out. What are the important, they often call them seminal works in an area. And by the way, where you find these things out, when you're doing a lit review, you should definitely be, when you find one scholarly article on your topic, they will discuss other research. They will talk about previous research, and they will tell you what to say. How do you know something's seminal? I've just found 3 articles on my topic, and all of them seem to reference this one book. There you go. That's a clue. And that's part of getting the lay of the land is, what are the important seminal works on this topic? What are maybe some research following in that vein? But, in a lot of cases, you're only going, you may not be going to much depth, because you're going to find an article, look at it, read the abstract, maybe scan through it, see what they're doing, and, assess, is this important? And it may be a part of a school of thought, but it may not be something that you need to go into depth, right? And that's part of getting, like I say, you go into depth when you need to, not when you don't. And that's perhaps not a trivial point. But it's just this thing of like, no, you're not going to read everything that's ever written, every word, and summarize every piece of it in the lit review. That would be too much. You're going to make intelligent choices reflecting the importance and relevance of the literature, and you're going to assess, hey, this is the important work, and here are some things that they've sort of related to it, and how much do you talk about each part is part of, giving a sense of the nature of the literature. So only go into depth on important pieces. I hope this has helped. I hope if you have any questions, please ask me. Maybe not about whether it needs to be double spaced, but other questions about the lit review are more than welcome.